Hi there. Let's discuss fridges for a moment. The modern traveler has the ability and the access to fridges that we didn't have 20 years ago. Many of the fridges that you see today is a result of the development in the veterinary fields and medical fields, and that created fridges that could be loaded into vehicles and made portable for on a small scale. And this had the effect that there were suddenly fridges available for us to use. Now, in the old days, it was a cooler box and it was a bag of ice, and you would keep things cold and off you go. But in the modern age, we've come across the technology that has now made it possible for us to almost operate from our vehicles like we would in our homes. We have deep freezers, we have normal fridge freezers, dual compartment, single compartment, stainless steel, aluminium, plastics. It's all out there. And it has definitely made our life a lot easier, especially when it comes to preserving your food. You don't have to worry about eating it immediately. You can actually refrigerate it, and also to travel with food. When you're traveling into different countries that have different restrictions on food, you can now plan for that, stock up for that specific situation, and travel with the food that you're allowed to have with you. So this video is not going to be a very long video because most of the things that you will need to know you can actually see in the shops and in the stores, as far as the fridges go that are available. So I'm just going to point out a few differences between fridges and the use of a fridge, and also give you a few ideas on what the common mistakes is that people would make with fridges. So first of all, the brands that you get these days are plentiful. You get them from the macro stores to the outdoor stores, the camping stores, the 4x4 places. You get local manufacturers like the National Luna, who's got a factory out here in Edenvale. Then you get the imported versions, the Engels, the Snowmasters, Wacos. You get all the different brands, and they are all slightly different. The two things that you have to look at when you look at these fridges are firstly the insulation. Insulation is extremely important when it comes to small fridges. So firstly is the insulation that is critical, and the second thing you have to look at is the compressor that it has, as far as longevity, quality, and reliability goes. So let's look at the insulation first. If you have a fridge with the same footprint, it's let's say it's a 90-liter fridge, and it's got a specific footprint, which means it's got a specific size. And I produced this 90-liter fridge as a standard, which National Luna has. And I then produce another fridge in the same footprint, in the same mold, but it's an 80-liter fridge. It means that insulation very likely has taken the space of that extra 10 liters. Now that means the 80 liter is more insulated than the 90 liter is. And it's clear in National Luna's 80 versus 90 liter that is the case. And they don't hide it, it's just the way that they manufacture these fridges. The 90 is classified as a weekender, so you plug it into your car and you have it for the weekend. And the 80 liter is more a deep freeze that you can pack away, and it runs on less energy. So if your insulation is better, it means that the heat from outside that wants to go into the cold finds it more difficult to travel through into the center of the fridge, and therefore you need less energy to maintain the fridge where it is. And that is critical when you are running off batteries. If you're standing somewhere on a campsite for a day or two, you're not driving, you're not busy charging your batteries, you really want your fridge to run for as little as possible, use as little as possible energy to maintain the fridge temperatures. Otherwise your batteries are just going to die. So the insulation is critical when it comes to these things. So whenever you look at a fridge, you have to try and find out what type of insulation is used. Now, typically if the guys produce energy consumption figures for these fridges and they have the magazine articles that compares the fridges, that's the one thing that you can pick up is the different insulations. Which one has better insulation, which one has not such good insulation. And it typically comes in with the price per hour to run it, or the energy consumption to run the fridge. The less insulated it is, the more energy it's going to use to keep whatever is inside cold. So look at the energy consumption of these fridges over an hour, not the amps that it uses to run the motor on, but the consumption of energy over an hour or a day, and compare the different fridges like that. The one with the least consumption generally would be the best insulated one. The compressor these days, they all very much run on the same brand of compressor. Now I always say to people, don't look at the name of the compressor. The name of the compressor always bantered around in the magazines and in the articles is like saying it's a Toyota. The Toyota sells many different vehicles. It doesn't just sell one vehicle. So you get many different compressors in the range that these guys sell. So if the one says we have the same compressor and they quote the same brand name, it could be the same brand, but it would be a different compressor. So be careful of assuming that if they quote the same brand name for this fridge, that it's the same quality as the other fridge. Look at the model of compressor that they use as well. If the model is the same, then it is the same. But it's possible that they can quote the same brand name, but have a different model. So insulation and compressor. Those are the two things that is critical when you look at fridges. Better insulated, last better on your batteries. And as I say, look at the footprint. If a fridge has the same footprint as another one, but it's got less literage, people would normally go away from that and say, no, there's a bigger fridge for the same size. That bigger fridge just has less insulation. It's going to run more heavily on batteries. So keep that in mind. If it's critical that you run as low as possible on your batteries, then it's important that you get the best insulation that you can. I typically see on a trip on day 3, more or less, we start getting battery problems. This is when people realize that either the battery is no good anymore or this fridge is just chowing up the energy, and we don't know why. And I'll tell you why. Fridges, the way fridges work, they can basically cool down from ambient, which is the outside temperature. They can cool down a maximum of 40 degrees. Let's work on 40 roughly. That's more or less the number. It doesn't really matter which direction you go. That's one of the things that the refrigerator and the refrigeration gases has as part of their setup. So let's work on about 40 degrees. That's why you got fridges that said minus 40 and those things. It's just because you have a delta T, a differential in temperature from ambient to cold of 40 degrees. Now I'll give you a scenario. Well, first of all, let me put the background. Your ambient temperature is whatever is around this fridge. So it's going to extract the temperature or heat from what's in the fridge. So let's say you put in a 2-liter Coke. It's going to extract energy from this Coke, and it has to transfer it through the gas, through the wall, and to the outside. And outside you have a radiator that spins this gas, and the air around this radiator on the outside has to be able to take up the heat. So if the air on the outside is extremely hot, you can't get that exchange of temperature, of heat, and therefore it won't cool down any further. So that's where you get this 40-degree thing. Now if you have the outside of your fridge extremely hot, it means that this fridge can only take extremely hot minus 40, and that is the lowest temperature that you can get with that fridge if you run it forever, because it can only give you that delta T of 40 degrees. Now, if you have a vehicle like a pickup or a twin cab or something, and your fridge is in the back and it's a canopy, it's closed, it's packed underneath a bunch of tents and things, you're driving through Zambia in December and it's 40 degrees outside, the inside of that canopy sits at 50 degrees, it's extremely hot. If around your fridge you have a temperature of 50 degrees, it means that that fridge can only cool down to 10, plus 10, that's it. So if it was a freezer, this freezer suddenly can't freeze because your outside temperature is too high. It doesn't have the ability because it can only do 40 degrees. And that is critical to remember. People don't realize how important it is to cool the fridge on the outside. Make sure there's ventilation. Make sure that that fridge can breathe. So if you stop in a campsite, open it up so that it can breathe and it can cool down a little bit. During the day, that fridge is running on battery, on your car's generator power, and it will just run for the whole day, and it will struggle for the whole day because it doesn't have nice cool air on the outside to work with. In the ideal world, I would connect a duct pipe to my air conditioner in the vehicle, run it to the back of my fridge, and just let that cold air at the back of my fridge, just release it there. That will help to make the fridge much more efficient during the day. So during the day it can get a lot colder, because if the fridge sees aircon temperatures of say plus 20, it can actually go down to minus 20, and that's quite critical to remember. If you look at a fridge, the readout on a fridge will tell you, let's say National Luna, you can set the temperature with a number, and you set the temperature to minus 15 because this is now a nice freezing temperature in your mind. Then the moment your outside temperature goes above 25, outside of the fridge, 25, which is not much, then that minus 15 is not going to be achieved. Now what happens now is the fridge wants to achieve minus 15 because you said minus 15. Outside temperature is 30 degrees, so it can't reach it. That means this fridge is just going to run for the whole day. And if you are standing in a campsite, you're not driving anywhere, it's running the whole day on battery power for no reason. If I took that fridge and I set the temperature to minus 6, then, and it's 30 outside, then it can actually get to minus 6 because it's a 36 delta T, and it's less than 40. So the fridge can handle it. It's still going to run for a long part of the day, but it will switch off from time to time. So it's going to use less energy because it's going to switch off quite a few times once it gets to minus 6. Now what we normally suggest to people is, if they drive during the day, open a bit of ventilation for the fridge, let it get some cool air, switch it down to the coldest temperature. You're running the vehicle in any case, so it's not using battery power, and let the fridge run as cold as it can, a freezer. And then tonight when you stop at your campsite, if you're going to stand for 2 nights or so and you need to conserve, set it back up to minus 6. Minus 6, minus 7 is a good number for a freezer. It's still, everything's still frozen, so no worries there. So on a freezer, minus 7 is good. On the fridge side, you would be talking about plus 3, plus 4. That's also a good number to have. And that would be the easiest way that the fridge will actually be able to manage temperatures. Now, the biggest mistake people make is they get to camp in the afternoon, they organize their tent and open the fridge, have a beer, and suddenly realize, oh, but we don't have any cold drinks or anything in the fridge. Get the cold drink out of the car, which is now baking hot, put it inside the fridge. This little fridge has a 40-liter space, for example. It's got a 2-liter inside of it now. It's 5% of the total volume has just been taken up by a 30 degrees Celsius bottle of cold drink. It has to use battery power to cool down the bottle of cold drink that you're not going to drink maybe until tomorrow. So I always say to people, leave everything that is warm outside for the night. Outside as in not packed away somewhere. So inside your vehicle, on the canopy, somewhere where it can cool down nicely with the evening air. Hot food, hot cold drinks, beer that you're going to drink tomorrow night, everything that you're going to use tomorrow, put it outside in the cold evening air and cool it down as far as you can. Tomorrow morning when you get up, all these things will be as cold as they can possibly be. You then take it, put it inside your freezer or your fridge, and your fridge only then has to drop it down from, let's say, 18 degrees to 4, and not from 30 degrees to 4. So that saves energy, and it also helps this poor little fridge that is working its backside off, just with managing the temperatures. So the way to run a fridge if you're on safari is to start on day one. Actually, day -1, the day that you're still in your garage at your home, to start running that fridge at the correct setup. Don't wait until you get on day 1 of your camping trip and then load your fridge, because if it has to use battery power and it's sitting in a hot environment, it is just not very effective, and the poor little fridge is going to work itself to death. So you have different types of fridges that you can pick. Just quickly, the side-by-side ones is probably the nicest ones, where you have a freezer and the fridge in the same compartment. This 90 liter that National Luna does has the freezer compartment on the right hand side, and then under the plastic cover it's got the fridge on the right hand side, and under the plastic container it has the freezer section. It's got 2 controls but only 1 compressor, so if that compressor breaks, then you have both sides down. This is the 90 liter that I often use on my trips. On the other side I have my backup 60 liter, which is single compartment 60 liter stainless steel National Luna fridge. It's also fridge / freezer, so it can freeze as well, and this I use generally as backup. So if one of my guests have freezer problems or fridge problems, I can always switch this one on. If it's not running, it's just acting as storage space, so I use it only in cases of emergency, or maybe on long trips where I need some extra space, or if I do a catering trip. The third fridge I have in my vehicle is the center console fridge, which is Indelbee 19 liter, and this one can actually take a 2 liter cold drink standing upright. Now this is even smaller, so imagine you put a 2 liter cold drink, warm cold drink, into 19 liter space. It's gonna battle to survive the experience, but this one is nice. In between consoles, it can also act as a freezer, and if we go down to Cape Town, for example, for a weekend, I would just load this into the vehicle and run it as a fridge, have a few cold drinks in there, and as we drive we can use it as required. So yeah, that's how we run fridges. Just a small tip on the energy consumption and the electricity that you use on a fridge. Once you leave energy sources like Eskom and you go into countries where the electricity grids are not so trustworthy, it's better to run your fridge off the batteries and have a charger that you plug into your 220 volt system. Because if you plug your 220 volt system, your fridge, into the power points, and you have a spike in electricity, you can burn your fridge. So it is much better to keep running your fridge on a 12 volt system, and rather than just recharge your batteries with a 220 volt. If you then have a spike, it's your battery charger that you have to replace, and not the fridge, which is generally a lot more expensive. And if your fridge packs up on a long trip, you really have a big issue. The last thing to remember is that not all fridges are manufactured in South Africa. So a good thing in my mind always when you buy a fridge is to check how long it takes to repair a fridge. National Luna, which is what I use, I trust them. I've never had any issues with my fridges, so I stick to National Luna. Their factory is in Edenvale, and if I have a problem, I go straight to Edenvale and I can sort it out right there. Some of the other brands, they need to send it away to Korea, and it's going to take you 6 weeks or 8 weeks to have the fridge repaired. In many cases it's not worth it, and you are stuck without a fridge. So yeah, it's a few things to remember. For me, it's just a personal preference thing. So whatever you prefer, whatever you enjoy, you can have that without a problem. So remember the big tip: don't load any hot items, warm items into your fridge in the afternoon. Let it stand outside, let it cool down, and first thing in the morning you can load it in the fridge, and then it'll be fine for the next evening. So happy shopping for fridges. If you have any other questions, please let me know, and I can help you out. Cheers.